Kia ora koutou. Whoa, just loud. Welcome this evening to St Peter's Space, to this place where people have gathered and prayed and celebrated and mourned and wrestled with issues for a long time. This building's been here since 1879. There was another building here before that. So you're welcome to be part of the ongoing life of St Peter's. And we're going to pray to begin. Kia inoi tātou. E te atua, te kaihanga o te ao, te kai aroha o ngā mea katoa. E arohaina mātou e koe, e hia ana koe ki a mātou, kia tia ki tētahi ki tētahi. Kua tae mai a mātou i tēnei pō, ki te whakarungo, me te urupare ki ngā wero, ki te tiaki i tō tātou whenua, me tō tātou hāpori. Manakitia tō tātou huihuinga i tēnei pō, me homai ki a mātou te maia, ki te whakarungo pai, ki te kōrero aroha, ki te mahi ai, mō te oranga o te katoa. Āmine.
Holy God, creator of the world, lover of all things, you love us and long for us to care for one another. We come tonight to listen and to respond to the challenges to care for our land and our community. Bless our gathering tonight and give us courage to listen well, to speak compassionately, and to work together for the good of all. Amen.
Ngā mihi Stephen and Jean. Kia ora koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Joe Anderson tōko ingoa. My name is Joe. I will be your MC for this evening. Ngā mihi ki te whare to this beautiful church, St Peter's. No mai haere mai, welcome if this is your first time. And also, I'll say greetings to all the Facebook live streamers. It's great to have you with us. So this is my home church. I moved here when I was 4. We came down from Tamaki Makaurau, so I know this place well. I've crawled up and down every pew, and there used to be an altar that we'd come and hide under and pull the altar cloth off. So it was a lot of fun, but I know it is a very political church as well, and it's amazing to be having this beautiful lineup of speakers tonight, while downstairs and around us the Free Store is in action. I think that is the church and politics sort of mingling in a really good way, and I'm very proud of the mahi that St Peter's does and the openness that it has. So, no mai haere mai kia koutou, welcome to you all, thank you for being here. Welcome to our incredible speakers. We have Dr. Cadence Komoana, we have Jonathan Boston, we have Ganesh Nana, and we have Paul Hunt. Now, we have slightly changed the order of the speaking. Paul is going to go last because he's been rushing from many things, and we're going to let him have a bit of a breather. How tonight is going to roll is each speaker will come up for about 10 minutes, and in 2 minutes to go, I'll just gently sort of wave the pohutakawa flower near them so they'll know that they've got about 2 minutes left. After each speaker, we're going to have a couple of minutes for questions, for pārtai. So please keep them brief, people, if you can. Keep them to the point, because we just have a few minutes just quickly to respond to each speaker. Then at the end, we have a little bit of time for a panel conversation and a couple more audience questions. Ka pai? Great. So, without further ado, I would like to now welcome our first speaker, Dr. Cadence Komoana, who has an awesome background in Māori research, development and leadership, currently the CE for the Public Health Association of New Zealand. And also Cadence is passionate about planetary and community wellbeing and is part of a lot of awesome community activities and events. And I think you also have completed a doctorate on mindset and leadership, which I would love to know a bit more about. So to give us some te tiriti perspectives on health and wellbeing, please welcome Dr. Cadence Komoana.
He honore he kororia he maunga rongo ki te whenua he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa tihei mauri ora. Ko te tuatahi me mihi kauana ki ngā atua, ko rangi ki runga, ko papa ki raro tēnā kōrua. Ki ngā tini mati kei wainganui a tātou, haere hoki ki Hawaii. Ki te kingitanga me whakahonore a kingi tūhei tia potatau te wherowhero te tuawhitu, me tōna whare kāhui āriki, rire hau pai māriri. O tira ki te whare, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. He uri hau no Ngāti Maniapoto, Waikato, Te Atiawa, Ngāti Apakura, ko Cadence Komoana tōku ingoa, ko au te tumu whakarai o te kāhui hauora, tūmatanui o Aotearoa. Huri au ki te reo prāua. Kia ora koutou. Good afternoon, good evening. My name's Cadence Komoana. Cadence means rhythm. And Komoana is an old Māori word for ocean navigator. So I like to think that I can kind of ride the rhythms of the tides. And when your boss says to you, can you please come and speak? Well, kei konei aho, here I am. So my presentation tonight for you all is on te tiriti perspectives on health and wellbeing. And I've been given a time limit of 10 minutes, but I've just spent about 4 minutes doing a mihi. So I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. Oh, it worked. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. At the Public Health Association, we have recently undergone a refresh of our strategy, and this was only just approved last week. But our purpose essentially is to be able to support, strengthen and advocate for the health and wellbeing of Aotearoa. This is a really important consideration for the activities that we invest in and the activities that we undertake. And all of our work is aligned and embedded with the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We have our mission here, and our mission hasn't changed too significantly, but at the Public Health Association, we look to promote, support and advocate for the health and wellbeing sector, founded on the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit about the situation that Māori face when it comes to health and wellbeing. It's not new to all of us that Māori overrepresent in negative statistics, and health is no exception. I've got a lot of words here, but from the headings, our people are often disengaged from the system because the system hasn't served them. So a lot of Māori don't necessarily engage in health services because they haven't served whānau for a number of different reasons. There are kaupapa Māori shortages, so that kaupapa Māori provision is a really important part for Māori to have as an option for receiving health supports. We're at a really critical stage of our health Māori health outcomes, and we're reaching a breaking point where we need to address some of the serious issues that lie within the system and provide other options for Māori to look at health and wellbeing supports. And I'm going to jump into our definitions of these words. Now, some of you might have seen these words before, you might have heard of them. Hauora, waiora, mauri ora, and oranga. And I'm not going to give you I'm not going to go through a wānanga about what all of these words mean. but they're all relevant to well-being for Māori. You can Google Mason Drury and he's got a wealth of academic research that identifies each of these and goes into a bit more detail. But ora is an important word. Oranga is the different facets of well-being. Hauora has a connection with the hau and pure. Waiora, there's a workforce development council that looks after the health sector called Toitu Te Waiora. And so there's a lot of meaning in that word waiora, and Te Waunui Tāne talks about that particular meaning. So I'm not going to go into all of those, but I want to just have them in your awareness about these words and these terms as points of well-being for Māori. And I know that I might speak a lot of Māori, so excuse me for not explaining, but if you want to ask questions later, you can. So at the Public Health Association, we have a number of priorities, and these priorities are not dissimilar to a lot of public health organisations across Aotearoa, equitable health outcomes being top of the list. We have a really strong history of good relationships, of having informed and educated research and policy development, and a history of being an agile organisation. So the Public Health Association, which I've only been there, by the way, for 7 weeks, I think. So I'm quite new to this, but to the organisation, but not new to the health sector. Being able to be agile is really important, particularly when governments change, for example. I also want to flag 5 of our organisation's values, and I'm going to say them to you. Manaakitanga, whakamanatanga, puawaitanga, tino rangatiratanga, and tika me te pono. A lot of people, I've heard some people refer to these as the tangas, and I think they're referring to words that end in tanga. That's really disrespectful. Please don't ever call them tangas. Say the whole word. But 4 of them, sorry, let me catch you guys up. Priority, sorry, I'm skipping on my own computer. Dave, could you help me and click one across? I think the batteries, there we go, values. There are our values. Tika e pono, if I go back one, thank you. Tika e pono, which is one of our values. Tika means doing the right thing, and pono refers to doing what is right. And so there are some decisions that need to be made around doing the right thing and doing what is right and doing the right thing. An example of that is where you might not always keep people happy, but you have to do the right thing, and that's the difference between tika and pono. I'm nearly finished, guys, so number 2, you better be ready. Our strategic objectives for the Public Health Association are listed here. We have 7. I'm not going to go into the detail of all 7, but the important parts that I wanted to share with you were our focus on honouring and being an honourable treaty partner, being advocates for our sector through being able to have informed policy submissions and informed policy development. Supporting our workforce is a really critical consideration for our organisation and for our members. A lot of our workforce are overworked and quite tired, and we need to make sure that we're supporting them. Sorry, David, I need help with the next one. Positioning and research. We want to drive public health research priorities, especially focused on Māori outcomes. Collaborative connections is referring to having relationships and partnerships that make a positive impact. We want to optimise our operations by having an organisation that functions and performs at a really high level. And then I have a list of some focus areas that we have here. Prioritising equity and Māori wellbeing. I see your pahutakawa, kia ora, thank you. just in closing, we really want to look at empowering communities, because we know, and Māori have a different lens of well-being that includes the earth, includes the whenua. Māori have a long history of, Māori are deeply intrinsically connected to the whenua and have a whakapapa to the whenua, with Papa Tuanuku being our earth mother and Ranginui being the sky father, and all of the stories, creation stories that are entwined within that. So we know we have sayings about when the earth is well, we are well. So well-being for Māori isn't just about being physically healthy, it isn't just about mental well-being, it's that whole collective holistic concept of well-being, which includes the earth, planetary health, and mental health and all of the aspects of oranga. I only have 2 slides left, I think. So we have the solutions. I have some answers here. Everyone just wants to know what's the answer, so then we can make it better, and then you can get on with it, and then we can all move on with the world. And actually, there's no one solution. And addressing colonisation and addressing land loss and addressing language loss and identity loss is more than just legislation and more than just systemic change. It's a long process, and I'm not going to go into decolonisation because we'll be here for about 3 days, day and night. But I do want to talk about indigenising, and indigenising spaces helps to create safe spaces for Māori well-being. What does indigenise mean? Indigenise means including things like karakia. It helps Māori to feel included and valued. Throw in a kupu Māori, a Māori word, into your conversations. It helps with Māori well-being. And I don't mean to simplify the issues we face as Māori in the health system, but indigenising creates a really safe and positive, inclusive approach to engaging in tikanga Māori and te reo Māori, which is actually all of our entitlement to enjoying that culture and that language. It's a beautiful world. Here is my council, and I've got a lovely picture of our co-president in the middle there, Gail Duncan. That's our entire council for the Public Health Association, and me, so I'm in there as well. And our mission is to drive kaupapa to create a country that has healthy and equitable outcomes for all New Zealanders. With this presentation isn't political as such. They're considerations that might help you to inform the decisions you make in your political preferences. The Public Health Association will still continue to be here and will still continue to do this work. I hope that we're able to, if there are opportunities to connect with people that are passionate about this kaupapa, we're really interested in connecting with you. But that's all that I'm going to share. I don't have any resounding last words, but thank you very much for the opportunity. Kia ora.
Do you mind staying in case there's a quick part-time for you?
Sure.
Yeah. Kia ora, Karawe. Thank you so much, Cadence. Awesome to hear about health and holistic thinking and indigenisation and decolonisation. Thank you. We have time for probably one quick a question. Does anyone have a quick question they would like to voice? There will be time at the end as well to come back. I just want to reach out and see if there's a burning question. I think you've blown everyone away with your beautiful kōrero. So, Cadence, kia ora, thank you so much. Ngā mihi nui. Let's give Cadence another round of applause. Amazing. And yes, I know it's hard to go into time limits when we're trying to fit in this Gregorian time thing, and actually, I wear this because I would rather just follow. This has no time on it. It's a pincushion, and it just helps me remember to go with the flow and follow other kinds of time. But thank you for obeying these time limits we have today. Ka pai. Also want to mihi to mana whenua. Aroha mai, I forgot to do that at the beginning. Ngā mihi nui ki te mano whenua, te Atiawa, me Taranaki Whānui, me Ngāti Toa Rangatira. Thank you for having us on this ground, and we recognise all of the things that have happened here and in this country. We all come from out of that. So now we're going to move into hearing from Emeritus Professor Jonathan Boston. Many of you will know Jonathan if you are from this congregation or from this city. Jonathan is the author of many, many books and is going to speak with us today about climate change and natural disasters. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, kia ora. You've just heard about well-being, and I think my task this evening is to make you uncomfortable. So I'm sorry. Next slide, please. In the short time available, I just want to mention a few key issues that are relevant to where we are globally and locally in relation to natural disasters and specifically climate change. I want to briefly mention kind of what's been happening globally in recent times and where we're headed, which is for more and more impacts, and then how we should respond to that in terms of trying to improve our capacity for anticipatory governance and enhance resilience to the impacts that are coming. Next slide, please. The Treasury, in its first Wellbeing Report last year, made the following statement: Aotearoa New Zealand has more risks from natural disasters than most high-income countries. The natural disasters risk is second only to Bangladesh, and you can imagine how bad that is. The estimated annual loss from natural disasters is about 2/3 of a percentage point of GDP, gross domestic product, or approximately $2.3 billion a year. In the last 12 months, it's been a lot more than that, and we will have to hope and pray it's not going to be as much as it has been in the last year in coming years. Next slide, and we'll just pass on that because you probably won't be able to see it. Next slide. Obviously, as you'll all be aware, we have experienced some shocking and very damaging weather events over the last 12 months, all over the country, in some parts of the country many times. That's West Auckland, late January. Next slide. Wairoa, 2 weeks later, and so it goes on. The key points here are as follows, and I'm sure most of you are aware. Earth has moved from the so-called Holocene, the last 10,000 years of Earth history, into the Anthropocene or the Anthropocene, the era in which human beings are the primary driver of what is happening in the Earth system. We're now about 1.2 degrees warmer than we were 150 plus years ago in pre-industrial times, and we're heading for 1.5. Indeed, this year, or possibly next year, we may well overshoot 1.5, but not on a sustained basis. We will do that within the next decade or so. Greenhouse gas emissions have not fallen, despite 30 years of efforts, and we are rapidly using up our carbon budget. We're heading for all manner of tipping points, and if we cross one or two of those, we risk a tipping cascade, which will have terrible consequences for humanity and all other species on the planet. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this just shows the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, what's been happening in terms of temperature. Next slide. One key point just to note is that the land surface temperatures on the planet, which is the top line there, are rising at about double the rate of ocean temperatures. So when you hear that we've gone up 1.2 degrees, that sort of doesn't give you a proper sense of really what's happening for those of us who live on land as opposed to living in marine conditions. Next slide, please. This is the IPCC's expectation or projection in relation to when we will pass the 1.5 degree target that was set in the Paris Agreement in 2015, and it's around about the mid to late 2030s. Next slide, please. There's a real possibility that warming will accelerate over the next few decades, in part because we are reducing the amount of sulfur we are pumping into the atmosphere from the burning of sulfur in marine bunker fuels and from coal-fired power stations and so forth, and as a result, the dimming effect of that will be reduced and we'll have an accelerated warming. Next slide, please. This just shows you the small amount of the global carbon budget we have left for humanity, essentially forever, if we are to have a 50% chance of remaining within a 1.5 degree warming cap. It's roughly 110 gigatons. We've burnt through 630 gigatons already. We're burning at the rate of 10 gigatons a year, so we've got about a decade left at current rates. Next slide, please. This shows the Earth as of the 3rd of July, the warmest I think it's ever been in the last many hundreds of thousands of years. Next slide, please. And this shows you some of the tipping points in the Earth system. The ones that are closest to us crossing, according to scientists, are for the Greenland ice sheet and the West Antarctic ice sheet, which between them have at least 10 meters of sea level rise. Now, that won't happen overnight, but it could certainly happen over many hundreds of years, or perhaps a millennium. Next slide, please. And I guess the key point here is that we are rapidly warming, we are rapidly moving into a different sort of state for the planet, and among the big sort of impacts that we're going to have here in New Zealand will be more flooding, more landslips, but later in the century, significant sea level rise. We don't know precisely how much, but by 2100 we could have as much as 1 meter of sea level rise. If we were very unlucky, it could be approaching 2 meters. Next slide, please. Next slide. Here in Wellington, the impact of just 1 meter of sea level rise, which is in the blue, will be devastating for coastal communities all around the city and the harbour and so on, and of course the central business district. This, I think, includes a kind of a storm surge in addition to 1 metre of sea level rise. But New Zealand is relatively fortunate in some respects relative to many other countries. Next slide, please. This shows you the outlook for Vietnam in 2050. The old projection of flooding is on the left, the new projection is on the right, and basically the whole of the Mekong Delta will be either underwater or so salinated that it will be impossible to grow crops. This will be devastating for Vietnam, but also devastating, bearing in mind that this sort of thing will be happening in the river deltas all over the world. So what's coming at us, next slide please, includes essentially more severe droughts, heat waves, floods, fires, winds, storm surges, pests and diseases. Sorry to the public health providers. Large-scale impacts on food production and food security, large-scale impacts on coastal settlements all over the world, and bear in mind we have the 9th longest coastline of any country. Large-scale impacts in the form of the mass involuntary movement of people within borders and across borders. We've currently got 80 million people moving, and we'll have a great deal more than that over the coming decades. All this will have huge economic impacts, disruption to supply chains, which Ganesh and his team have been working on in recent times, and the risk, of course, of resort to more autocratic governance. Next slide, please. As someone trained in political science, perhaps the thing that worries me most about what's coming at us from the future is the loss of our capacity to govern democratically. And if we're going to have any chance in this country of protecting ourselves against what's coming, we need really good anticipatory governance. And I'm going to make a very political comment in my next statement, which is to say I fear we will not be electing a government next month that will be committed to robust anticipatory governance. So, next slide. That doesn't tell you who we're going to elect, though, does it? So, one of the things I've been involved in significantly in recent years has been work on how we might create an adaptation policy framework for New Zealand that will help us to adapt to what's coming, and in particular to help people move out of harm's way in the face of more severe flooding and more severe sea level rise. There's a number of reports there, and I can make these available to people if they're interested. Next slide, please. The key thing here, and I'm sure you won't be able to read these words, is that what is coming at us is going to be exceptionally challenging. We've already failed to mitigate climate change, in other words, to reduce emissions. The problems of adapting to what's coming is going to be A, more difficult, and B, much longer. So sorry, folks, this is grim, all right? But we can prepare and we can put in place policy frameworks that will help us. And that includes, amongst other things, much better risk assessment, fit-for-purpose legislation that enables us to plan well, adequate powers for compulsory movement of peoples where that's going to be needed, bespoke arrangements to address some fertility issues, which will be very, very significant over the coming decades, some kind of public compensation scheme to assist people to move in the face of floods and inundation, and a much better emergency response. Final 2 slides, next slide, and then the next one. So look, just to sum up, I'm sorry to say, but I don't think most people have any idea about what is coming at us from the future and just how much we are now committed to globally because of our failure globally to act to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to address biodiversity loss. We are very close to crossing some key tipping points in the Earth system. Once crossed, there will be potentially devastating consequences. Sea level rise for New Zealand is going to be particularly challenging. We need to prepare for that, and we need to be absolutely realistic about what we need to do in order to adapt effectively, efficiently, and hopefully equitably. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kia ora, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your passion and your information. As usual, we now have a little bit of space if someone has we have a pātai right here.
Thank you. How do you assess the impact of war and extreme volcanic eruptions?
Do you mean globally or locally?
Globally, in terms of the effect on temperature rise.
Right. So first of all, the normal volcanic eruption on land will tend to have a masking effect for a year or two because of the amount of sulfur and other stuff that's pumped into the stratosphere. The volcanic eruption that happened near, was it Tonga? Yes, Tonga, forgive me. Last year was unusual in one sense. It was an underwater explosion which released a vast amount of water into the stratosphere, and water is a greenhouse gas in effect. So it has a warming effect. So the impact of volcanic activity will depend to some extent on whether these are kind of subterranean volcanic eruptions of a vast nature or land-based. What was the other part of war? Devastating. And the problem is war is going to make it more difficult for us to adapt globally to what is coming. And I fear that the involuntary movement of vast numbers of people that is going to happen, and is going to happen, is going to be very destabilizing politically and will contribute to more conflict internally and between countries. Sorry. Yeah. Telling it as it is.
We have one last quick question at the back. Thank you.
Hi there. Do you anticipate any sort of benefits from artificial intelligence in dealing with the environmental problems?
Absolutely, but I think artificial intelligence is a two-edged sword. I think there will be definite benefits in terms of things like energy efficiency, helping to design things that perhaps are even unimaginable at the moment. So no question in my mind that there will be benefits in terms of decarbonisation and helping us to adapt, but there's also going to be all manner of risks associated with artificial intelligence, and I think people are increasingly aware of those, sadly. I mean, part of the really critical question is whether we're going to have any hope of controlling the development of artificial intelligence, and by that I mean globally as well as locally.
Kia ora. Thank you, Jonathan. Amazing. Thanks again to Jonathan. And I do note a question at the back there. We'll hopefully come back to that at the end when we have our panel. But just moving us along, can I just briefly say I love tying pacifism and environmentalism together because I know if volcanoes and war, I know which one I would ditch. So our next speaker is the incredible Dr. Ganesh Nana, who is a first-generation New Zealander, born, bred and educated here in Te Whanganui a Tara. He's the current chair of the Productivity Commission, Te Komihana Whaihua o Aotearoa, and always very exciting to hear you speak. Ganesh believes economics is fundamentally about people and their communities and is best reflected in our collective role as kaitiaki o taonga. So welcome.
Thank you. Oops. E ngā iwi, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e raurangatira mā. Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. It's a pleasure to be here after Jonathan's presentation. I'm not quite sure whether I'm the right. Where you bring in an economist to lift your spirits after a bit of a presentation. So we know we are on difficult ground. We're definitely struggling, but I'm here as chair of Productivity Commission, and I know productivity is not a welcome word in many parts of this country, and dare I say for probably some right reasons in the past. But my job is, I suppose, to have the conversation about what productivity actually means and how it can help us, and to turn around our mindsets, and dare I say, to provide hope for the future, because I very much dearly believe that there is hope for the future. And while we've made some bad decisions and choices in the past, the solutions are out there in front of us. I've gone low tech. I haven't got a presentation. I'll just speak to just give you some words and take the conversation from there. But right up front, I'd like to, I suppose, quote from the legislation that set us up, the Productivity Commission, and just to reinforce to you what productivity actually means if we take it seriously. And the purpose of the Productivity Commission, and this was in legislation that was set in 2010, so just note the time horizon, is, and I quote, to provide advice to the government on improving productivity. Yeah, bland, okay, but there are other things that are important, and I'll carry on improving productivity in a way that is directed to supporting the overall well-being of New Zealanders. And my eyes lit up. Well-being is in there already in 2010. That was news to me, but I'm fine, I'll live with that. But then it goes on even further. This is all about productivity, by the way, improving well-being, overall well-being of New Zealanders, having regard to a wide variety of communities of interest and population groups in New Zealand society. And to me, that gives me my kaupapa. Yes, productivity is important, but it's not any and every productivity measure that we want to strive for. It's the good productivity that we're after, the productivity that actually does support well-being, and not just the well-being of the few, the well-being of all of us, recognising that there are many in our communities that have missed out in the past and continue to miss out. And I think that's where I'm at. So I don't downplay the importance of productivity, but I do overstate the importance that we look at productivity clearly and understand the why, because many have picked up that word productivity and used it to justify a whole lot of things which haven't delivered or supported well-being and haven't supported well-being across that wide variety of communities of interest. Just in terms of that, in terms of the wide variety of communities of interest, I put out, I just note to you one of the publications that the Productivity Commission put out earlier this year, which is A Fair Chance for All, Breaking the Cycle of Persistent Disadvantage. And I know some people came to us and say, why is the Productivity Commission interested in a fair chance for all? And I picked up that, read the legislation. It's about delivering, it's about supporting the overall well-being of New Zealanders, recognising all the different groups that make up Aotearoa in the 21st century, and recognising as a pure, dull, boring economist that we all lose out if some in our community are missing out. It's not just those who are missing out, we all lose out in totality if we don't use and nurture and improve all of our potentials together. And the other quote or comment that I like to put in front of you in that context of society and community, I came across an editorial that was published in the Financial Times. Forgive me, I read these sorts of newspapers, but never mind. The Financial Times, and it was published in April 2020, so if you remember that's just the start of that pandemic, and we didn't quite know what was happening, but at that period of time. And don't forget, the Financial Times, for those who may not be aware, was one of the, I suppose, cheerleaders on the sidelines of the Thatcher-Reagan revolution in the 80s. Actually, it wasn't on the sidelines, it was actually in the playing field in terms of its being the flag bearer for that revolution. But here in 2020, the Financial Times put out an editorial that says, entitled, "Virus Lays Bare the Frailty of the Social Contract." And to me, that's, I sort of say, yeah, okay, so what? But it's coming from the Financial Times, and I find that quite interesting, and I use it a lot. And just a couple of quotes from that. One of them says, "Radical reforms are required to forge a society that will work for all." And my eyes lit up at that, because let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that some of us were telling us that society didn't exist, or there was no such thing as society. And here we've got one of the flag bearers of our economic world telling us that actually society matters, community matters, and it's actually a common theme in our Fair Chance for All inquiry about the strengths of our communities and recognising those strengths and nurturing them and actually empowering the communities. And I pay my respects to Cadence there. You use that in one of your slides, and it's, again, if we're serious about lifting productivity and supporting well-being, recognise that our communities are one of our best assets here in Aotearoa compared to other parts of the world. So yes, support them, nurture them, actually empower them. One of them is allow them to make decisions, allow our communities to make decisions, and it's sort of that participatory democracy that we're all trying to talk about. And I think that's where I'm keen in terms of where the Productivity Commission is at the moment. We have we've been through all the strategy refresh and all of that. We've kept our purpose. We've got no problems with our legislation. We have a quick tagline, which we try to sum everything up. It's called Productivity, People and Place. And whichever of those ones you're interested in, they all go together. And that's what we're interested in. We're interested in productivity and people and place. And none of those things look after themselves. The last bit of, I suppose, technical language I'll use as an economist, I have to. If we're interested in productivity or people or place or all of those three things, there's one thing that we have to do that we've forgotten how to do in this country, and it's called investment. Okay? And it's not financial investment, and I'm not talking about buying the house next door, okay? I'm talking about investment in our people, in our communities, nurturing them, lifting them, ensuring that the schools are fit for purpose, ensuring the hospitals are, ensuring our community networks are embracing all of the different groups that make up Aotearoa. Those things don't happen by mistake. They don't happen automatically by the great market mechanism. They require us to invest in that effort. And so that investment, one last point, requires the one thing that's missing here is a long-term time horizon. If we're serious about changing the world, we've got to think about the long term. We've actually got to think about the next generation and beyond. I like the phrase about being a good ancestor. One of the core recommendations in our Fair Chance for All inquiry, and it sounds geekish, but the recommendation was that we institute a parliamentary commissioner for future generations whose sole role in responsibility is to be the voice of future generations, because that's the voice that's missing in our decision-making framework at the moment. What I want to leave you with is one quote from that Financial Times editorial. And again, I use it as a point of, or as a source of optimism and hope. I quote, "Radical reforms reversing the prevailing policy direction of the last 4 decades will need to be put on the table. Governments will have to accept a more active role in the economy. They must see public services as investments rather than liabilities. And I'll leave that with you. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa.
Do you mind waiting if there's a question? Now, Mihi, you have uplifted us as an economist. Thank you. Do we have any pātai, any questions? Or we so just, yes, we have one from Gail here. While the mic's going, Kim Stanley Robinson's Ministry for the Future. Have you read that book? That's about exactly what you were talking about, as if, yeah, it's brilliant. Gail.
Thank you very much for the for your presentation. My question is that investment that's so necessary. Could you give us an indication of the amount of investment that investors need to have courage to invest for the future?
Well, I don't have problems with where it might come from, and I don't think there's any shortage of that investment. You're talking financials? I think we can find the financials. It's a mindset shift. It's about behaviour. Are we prepared to invest now for tomorrow, or do we continue down the path of spending for today? And that's a big shift in mindset that we have to have. Because we have, boring economists, it really is that choice between spending for today or spending for tomorrow. And we have, for too long, spent for today. For too long, my generation is guilty, and I feel very guilty about it, but I want to put it right. So let's start being a good ancestor.
Kia ora. Thank you. I think it's a beautiful place to end on. Wow, amazing. I just feel so lucky to be sitting here listening to these incredible speakers that we have already had, and we have one more, our final speaker now. So our final speaker is Paul Hunt, who is a national of Aotearoa and UK. Paul studied law at Cambridge, and he's lived and undertaken human rights work in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, as well as here in Aotearoa. It's a great honour to have you here to talk about housing as a human right. So please welcome New Zealand's Chief Human Rights Commissioner, Paul Hunt.
Tue te rangi e tu nei, tue te papa e takoto nei, tue te miro tangata. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Talofa lava, namaste, shalom, salam alaikum, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Gail, for inviting me this evening. And thank you, Joan, for looking after us. And thank you, everyone, for making time to attend this evening. Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge my terrific panelists, Cadence, Jonathan, Ganesh. Thank you all. Some of you might understand that so close to the election, I'm unable to comment on the performance of the government. Now, this requires of me an exercise of self-restraint that is uncharacteristic. Perhaps I've already gone too far with that comment, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to say that and say that I'm proposing to make a few remarks by way of introduction to the introduction to the right to a decent home grounded on Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and outline a little bit about the housing inquiry that the New Zealand Human Rights Commission ran for 2 years. So first of all, just briefly, what is this human right to housing? What is this human right to a decent home? Did I make it up? No, I certainly didn't make it up. And the roots of this fundamental human right are really very relevant today in our world, and they're very instructive. And just briefly, I want you to think of what happened before the Second World War, the 1920s, the 1930s, in Germany and elsewhere, where there was inequality and poverty and a sense of victimhood. And this proved to be, in the 1920s and 1930s, in some of Europe, this proved to be a very fertile ground for authoritarianism. The Nazi Party, the rise of Hitler, which led, as we all know, to the Second World War and the Holocaust. After the Second World War, a couple of really remarkable documents were agreed. There was the United Nations Charter. Article 1 of the UN Charter says that one of the aims of the United Nations is to promote human rights. It's one of the primary aims in Article 1 of the UN Charter, how to advance human rights. And then an even more remarkable document emerged in 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that Universal Declaration of Human Rights encompasses a very wide range of human rights. It encompasses human rights that you will have heard of, we're all familiar with. Freedom of speech, which is terribly important. The prohibition against torture. The right to vote. So within the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there were those human rights, but in addition, there were also workers' rights. There were also cultural rights, and there were also social rights. And one of the social rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the right to a decent home. The right to a decent home. And the reason why the drafters of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights included the whole spectrum of human rights, because they were trying to address authoritarianism, but also the causes of authoritarianism. The causes of authoritarianism, a sense of alienation, of victimhood, of inequality, poverty. So those drafters of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were trying to address authoritarianism, but also the causes of it. And that meant that they wanted to give attention to social rights, the right to a decent home, the right to accessible education, the right to fair health care and public health. So there you have the right to a decent home. There it is, back in the 1940s. Now in New Zealand, I have to say, we've lost sight of those social rights. We have in New Zealand a really important legislation, the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. It focuses on one part of human rights, civil and political rights. But in New Zealand, social rights are virtually unrecognised in the law in New Zealand. And the job of the organisation that I work for, the New Zealand Human Rights Commission, our job is to advance all human rights for all. All human rights, not just civil and political rights, but also the other rights which are in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, including the right to a decent home. And in the New Zealand Human Rights Commission, it's our job to advance those human rights, and it's our job to hold government to account, in relation to those human rights commitments. New Zealand has signed up to all that stuff about the right to a decent home. It's signed up to that stuff at the international level, but New Zealand has neglected those human rights at the national level. Now, beyond New Zealand, many countries think we've really fallen behind. In many countries, the right to a decent home is recognized. In many countries, there are thousands, I don't exaggerate, thousands of cases and policies and programs and initiatives around the right to a decent home. In many countries, the right to a decent home is considered to, it's very nuanced, it is very deep. But here in Aotearoa, the right to a decent home is little known. It's pretty much invisible. And it's for that reason that the New Zealand Human Rights Commission launched a housing inquiry 2 years ago, a housing inquiry looking at the right to a decent home. And we founded it on the right to a decent home grounded on Te Tiriti. And if you're interested in our inquiry and our various reports, you can find them on our website. And I just want to mention a couple of points around our inquiry, what we emphasize. We emphasize that you've got to look at colonization. You've got to recognize that Māori had guardianship of 100% of the land, but now 5%. And please reflect on the enormity of that land loss that often arose from violence. So, in our inquiry, we give proper attention to context, colonization, culture, history, demography, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and what we try to advance is a rich multicultural society grounded on Te Tiriti. And I need to wrap up my remarks in a moment, and I just say this, that one of the issues that we look at in our inquiry is values. Human rights embody a set of values. And I have to say, friends and colleagues, we have lost sight of those values in the last 40 years or so. The values are fairness, manaakitanga, respect, dignity, kaitiakitanga, stewardship, community, well-being, equality, equity, responsibility. And all of those values are embodied in human rights, and that's why human rights has to be at the center of everything that we do. And that hasn't happened in the housing sector for the last 40 years. The right to a decent home means we have to give particular attention to disadvantaged communities. We have to give attention to bottom-up community participation. We have to give attention to homelessness. There are well over 40,000 homeless people in Aotearoa. We have to give attention to affordable housing for all, housing that's culturally appropriate, safe, warm, dry, with security of tenure, and we have to hold government to account. We live in a housing emergency and a human rights emergency. It's a catastrophe for homeless people. And human rights can empower communities, human rights can dignify individuals, human rights can entrench policies, human rights can hold government to account. So to close, the right to a decent home is an obligation of the New Zealand government. And the right to a decent home doesn't provide a magic solution to complicated issues, but the right to a decent home does help us chart a way forward. Māori ki te rangi, ora ki te whenua, Māori ora ki a tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Thank you, that was awesome. Thank you. Kia ora. Before we move into the panel part, do we have any burning part here? Question? Lovely. I don't know if we know. I think we've got a partai over here.
Thank you to the panellists. We received in our letterbox this week a 30-page booklet called Stop Co-Governance. It's obviously got a lot of money behind it, getting this all around the country. To me, it looks like an exercise in white supremacy, and so I'm just wondering what any of the panellists might comment on that.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe that's a good chance for us to actually bring the whole panel up and we could talk to that. Oh, Paul, you could stay as well if you don't mind. You will, great. So let's welcome back Cadence and Jonathan and Ganesh and Paul. And there was a call kōrero as well about what it's like in hell, but I said I don't know if any of us know how to answer that. And we'll get the mic to pass between our panellists.
You're in charge.
So welcome back and thanks again for what an amazing journey. I feel we kind of came full circle at the end here, back to colonisation and looking at history and where we've come from. But the partai that was just raised was about, was the pamphlet that was received in the letterbox looked like white supremacy. Does anyone want to tackle that question? Would you like it to be repeated, or?
I think it goes back to what Paul mentioned actually, and just around values and what your values are and what priorities you have in terms of political priorities. I don't have much more to say about that.
Anyone else? Or we can call out for other questions.
I suspect that several members of the panel are constrained in what they can say given the election campaign, so probably I'm a little freer than others. As people will, I'm sure, be aware, we have a range of co-governance models in New Zealand which have been developed over some decades. They reflect, obviously, the principles of Te Tiriti. They also reflect, in many cases, common sense about how we can govern well, govern organisations, manage resources such as rivers or lakes and so forth. My sense is that the current government has been woefully hopeless in explaining the case for co-governance, and as a consequence, a significant number of fears and anxieties have been raised within the community about what all this means. And I suspect it's now too late. I think they've lost the plot, so to speak. And as a consequence, we're in an election campaign in which co-governance has got a bad kind of framing, and various political parties and other people who are involved in seeking to influence public opinion will be campaigning in the way that, Richard, you've encountered. I haven't seen that particular booklet, and I don't have time to read 30 pages, thankfully, but I suspect we're going to hear a lot more about this in the next 6 weeks, 5 weeks or so.
Thanks. Thank you both. I wanted to come back to the question. Yes, thank you.
Which way?
Yeah.
Greetings, everybody. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you for coming. I don't think I'm probably the only one in the country who feels that we're in the middle of an election campaign which is somewhere caught between lofty goals and muddling mediocrity. And I would like to know from each of the panellists, without commenting on politics, tell us one concrete strategic measurable lever you can pull that will make a measurable difference on the kaupapas that each of you are caring about, whether it's housing, productivity, etc. So no values, no slogans, one big lever each.
They want me to start? Yeah. The Public Health Association have a strong history of advocacy, listening to workforce and community needs and informing policy. So that policy can then affect system change. So that's one of the areas that we will continue to work within, to be able to inform system change from the inside, from the outside in, and then work with government to be able to implement those policies in a way that helps to support our purpose and our vision, which is a healthy Aotearoa. Thank you.
I hate to settle down to one, but I mean, you can read our inquiry document if you like, and there's several recommendations in there, but I'll pick out the one that I've already mentioned. And it reflects one of the critical things that we've missed in the past, which is the long-term perspective. And one of the barriers that we identified in our inquiry was the short-termism that is prevalent in our society, community and policy decision-making. So we need that recommendation, the Parliamentary Commissioner for Future Generations, which has a legislative role to hold governments to account from the perspective of the future generation, to be the voice of that future generation, and to some way, in that way, balance the imbalance we've got in terms of short-term versus long-term. Other recommendations I could go through, but that would be my one big lever at the moment.
Good question, thank you. My answer is a lawyer's answer. I'm a lawyer, right? Sorry about that. And I just would like about 6 words. 6 words would do it. New Zealand, successive governments in New Zealand have agreed to be legally bound in international law, legally bound to do all they possibly can to advance the right to a decent home. They've agreed that in international law. It's binding in international law. But what I want is that promise to be brought home here. It can be done in about 6 words in a piece of existing legislation, just legal recognition of the right to a decent home grounded on te tiriti. That would dignify individuals and empower communities and improve lives. Thank you, sir.
Well, David, as you know, no one policy change will be adequate given the magnitude of the issues we face. Let me mention 2. In the interests of a much fairer, more inclusive society, we desperately need further tax reform, including a proper comprehensive capital gains tax. And sadly, no political party, with the exception perhaps of those who are not going to get elected, support really significant tax reform. But coming back to the topic that I was speaking about, namely climate change and its impacts on New Zealand and globally, locally here we can and we must enact comprehensive climate change adaptation legislation which incorporates some kind of public compensation scheme to enable us to afford and fairly and effectively fund the costs that are coming at us from the future, including moving people out of harm's way. Without that, we're going to witness more and more of what we've experienced in the last 12 months, and there'll be more and more homeless, productivity will fall, and Māori will suffer disproportionately.
Great, I see two hands up. We'll try to keep them quick. Thank you.
Paul Clutterbuck from Renters United. A question for Paul Hunt, and this is coming from the impact of homelessness and housing on the housing shortage on disabled people in particular. There is a really severe impact on disabled people which we are not even really aware of as a society. One really quick lever, one really simple lever that we could pull to make things much better for renting, and that is to take the caps off the accommodation supplement so that then people on benefits have more choices as to the places that they rent and can afford the market rents that we're seeing today.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thanks for that comment, and I esteem your organisation and the work that you do. Thank you for it. I won't respond to that particular suggestion, which is of real value. I would just take the opportunity to make another suggestion, and it's in one of our reports that we've made under the Housing Inquiry, and that is to extend the protections of the Residential Tribunals Act Tenancy Act to people in emergency housing. So at the moment those people in emergency housing have been excluded from existing protections. And it's not new, it's written down in our reports. That can't be right. The most vulnerable are having some modest protections removed from them. So I just put that on the table as well for people to consider. But thank you for your important work.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Manjit. I run a small charity called Ekta. We take care of people of Asian descent, largely. We run the charity also from this church. It's one of the sites from which we give groceries out. What I'd like to ask the panelists is there been enough attention given and acknowledgement given to the poverty among Asians? Asians form 20% of the population, second largest group after the Europeans. Poverty rate measured by child poverty statistics, we are in the same ballpark as Pacifica and Maori. And my question to you is there enough attention been given to Asians? Thank you.
I think short answer, there probably isn't much attention to that particular community. We do, I won't say we highlight it, but in our report we do cover off some of those, some of the range of the different communities that are disadvantaged. And I don't want to get too technical, but part of the problem is that we don't collect data very well in this country. So once we know a fair bit about the average, but once we slice and dice the numbers to give us that detail, it's just not there. And if the information and the data is not there, then they go missing in the policy debate. So you raise a fair point. I don't have an answer for you. I do have, and forgive me if I go technical again, but one of our recommendations in our inquiry is, and it's that investment word again, is to invest much more in data collection so that we can make better informed decisions.
Thank you. Just because there was one hand that went up, yes, this hand here in the middle, this will be our very last question.
I have some comment on AI in our society. AI, artificial intelligence, improve productivity, help in decision making for policy forming. And it's election year this year. I wonder, would the government have budget in AI through education, employment, and innovation to increase our productivity, to have better access to health in decision making, and to improve the quality of life?
Sorry, I missed some of them.
The question is about AI and maybe if the government has significant investment in that to help us improve productivity. Who mentioned AI? Was that you?
Wasn't me, but...
perhaps if I can comment. Artificial intelligence is incredibly important and is going to have profound implications globally and locally. The impacts are going to vary across industries, across sectors, across different communities and groups. They're already... Artificial intelligence in the form of ChatGPT, for example, and Bard is already having a pretty significant effect on the way we assess performance in education, including tertiary education, for example. It's already having implications for employment in various sectors of the labour market. If your question is, what should we do? That's a very big question. I mean, New Zealand is going to be primarily a taker of what is happening internationally. We're not major global players in the artificial intelligence arena, though there will be specific areas where we will contribute from the research and the activities of frontier companies and so on. But the major issues are around how do we ensure just transitions, particularly, for example, in the labour market, in contexts where significant numbers of people will have their employment displaced as a result of increased reliance on robots and other forms of artificial intelligence. And in that context, I mean, this is really Ganesh's area, but the importance here is that we have really good active labour market policies, including proper retraining opportunities for people whose jobs will be lost as a result of technological innovation of various kinds. And I think it's fair to say we haven't done very well in that country, in that area in New Zealand. I'm afraid, as Paul is suggesting, in many areas of social policy, including labour market areas, we have fallen behind. And there's a lot that we need to do. I rather doubt that artificial intelligence is going to figure highly in this election campaign. Having said that, it's probably being used by some of the political parties and their operatives to guide their advertising and the targeting of where they deliver 30-page booklets to.
Paul just was going to comment quickly.
I think outside of that, those social policies that are required as well in any transition from an economy, I think that the adoption of AI or other technological innovations, we as a country have had a very poor record of uptake in the past. And I can give you data about that. We have not been good in picking up the best technology abroad and using it or developing our own technology. And so it is no surprise that we have such miserable productivity statistics and all of the other stuff that goes from it. So the key thing, and I hate to use the word again, it requires investment. It requires investment in our capability, in our firms, to pick up those new things that happen. And until we are prepared to do that investment in our people over time, we will continue to be laggards in the uptake of whether it be AI, robotics, or anything else out there that is designed to help us live a better life.
What an amazing evening this has been. I feel we've been on such a beautiful journey challenged, excited, hopeful, despairing, all the wonderful things. This incredible, all of your kōrero has just been so rich. We mihi to your passion and to your being out there in the public realm and coming out to things like this and sharing your message. Huge mihi to everyone here for coming out and joining us on the live stream. These things matter, these choices matter. Can I also mihi to the St Peter's on Willis Social Justice Group? Can you put your hands up if you're one of the social justice group? So this crew organised this tonight, so thank you. And yes, mihi to all of us and you. Thank you. We would like to, we have a little gift just for all of our awesome panellists. So while I just go over and get that, can we please give a huge, but after this we're going to have a karakia whakamutanga from Jean and Stephen. But let's give a big round of applause to Cadence Komoana, Ganesh, Nana, Paul Hunt and Jonathan Boston. Thank you so much.